Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Hot Seat. I am your host, Brock Vieira. The show is sponsored by Team NBS Media. Before we get started, I just want to shout out my boy Mark Wilson. He lives up in New York City, Philadelphia native, and he has his own clothing brand, Rich Kid Clothing. I'm actually sporting it right now. Rich Kid, excellent stuff. Go check his stuff out, richkidclothing.com. Today we're going to be talking about the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Vikings are a very intriguing team in the NFL for a multitude of reasons. They possess one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, if not the best wide receiver, in Justin Jefferson, the player who is the odds-on favorite for most receiving yards entering the 2023 season. They have a very dynamic offense under Kevin O'Connell, but they went through a lot of changes this offseason. Bring on to the show is a gentleman by the name of Steve Rogers. Now, I've known Steve for about a year now through Team NBS Media, and he's a very knowledgeable voice in football in general, but especially his beloved Minnesota Vikings. This guy, when we did our show with Bill Carroll, he was winning every single week. Dude breaks down everything in a beautiful manner, and the best part is that he has the insight that gives us what we need to properly assess the Vikings. Now, the Vikings went 13-4 last year, but they also had like a point differential of like -3. So there was a lot of really close games, and there was also a big blowout loss to the Cowboys that kind of resulted in that. Regardless, they did win the division comfortably, may I add, and then they got upset by the Giants in the first round of the playoffs. Let's talk about the 2023 season, but without further ado, please welcome my guest, Steve Rogers. Steve, how are you doing today?
How's it going, everybody?
Yeah. Well, we're doing good. Obviously, we're here to talk about your Vikings. What are your thoughts so far about them entering the 2023 season?
It's been kind of shaky. I haven't been totally all the way behind all the decisions. I think it was a little premature to jettison away from Delvin Cook. I'm still not convinced that Alexander Madison is the full starting workhorse way to go. Ty Chandler has sounded like he's been impressive in camp, so it might actually become a dual back situation there because Ty Chandler has some better pass catching abilities for those certain areas that come into play. They re-signed Daniil Hunter to a 1-year deal. He wants a bigger deal, so I think we're going to get the best Daniil Hunter we've seen. So that'll help, and also the addition of Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, is going to reshape the defense. So hopefully that point differential will look a little bit better this year. I'm excited to see a lot of things, and they've managed to construct the roster. I think we're not really going to be concerned so much about the run game. It's going to be an all-out aerial assault with now 4 different former first-round draft picks in the wide receiver room alone, plus TJ Hawkinson and Brandon Oliver at tight end. This team is really loaded for Kirk Cousins to just literally have a field day finding whoever is open. And with that many first rounders and Justin Jefferson being the number 1 guy, there's going to be open holes in the field for Kirk Cousins to find. And Kirk's pretty good at finding open receivers.
Absolutely, yes, he is. And this, obviously, we saw him take a step up this year in this scheme. He really got back to basics, and he looked not only comfortable but also confident in his ability. Something that I felt kind of lacked during the end of Mike Zimmer's tenure. You mentioned that wide receiver room, and that's what I want to kick off with. Obviously, we mentioned Jefferson, and how can you not? He is a bona fide baller. But you guys added with this year, first round pick Jordan Addison, as mentioned. You guys traded for Jalen Rager. You guys also have KJ Osborne, who I know that you personally are a big fan of. And you guys added some other different pieces from around college football that I really like. Do you think that they're able to make up for the lack of production that Dalvin Cook obviously won't provide for you guys anymore?
Those are some big shoes to fill. Dalvin definitely had an impact and made a difference in moving the chains for us the last few years. So I'm really kind of expecting big things from Alexander Madison because I overheard from an interview he did on local radio that actually Delvin Cook and Amir Abdullah had dubbed him Beast Mode 2.0. So I'm interested to see how much of that actually exists. But we'll see. Like I said, they were kicking the tires around on free agent Kareem Hunt, and Jonathan Taylor is now available for a trade. I'm not sure what we would be giving up to make that package work, but it's interesting that if we were able to go looking and knock in the door on Kareem Hunt, I don't think they're fully satisfied with what they have in the running back room. So we'll see. But again, I think we'll be picking up lots of yards through the air in big chunks, and it's going to be interesting to see, and it's going to be hard to stop with that many receivers that we can just interchange in and out, route to route, and keep guys fresh legged. And the defense is just going to be on backpedaling. So
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of talk about the construction of this roster. I know you mentioned that there were some moves that you liked, some moves you didn't like. I think the message is very clear. Minnesota wants to get younger quickly.
yeah.
If you look at some of the guys that they lost in the offseason, obviously that was spearheaded by Adam Thielen, but they also lost Eric Kendricks, Irv Smith Jr., Cameron Dantzler, Patrick Peterson, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, and of course Dalvin Cook, as previously mentioned.
But
Do
managed
you,
to keep Harrison Smith, the oldest guy on the defense.
yeah, that was interesting. I think that it was also spurred on by Lewis Sines suffering a season-ending injury fairly early
Yeah.
last season. But it's interesting because when you look at the free agent pickups, they picked up Brian Murphy, who just came off his rookie deal. Marcus Davenport just came off his rookie deal. And then you look at, the wide receiver room, as mentioned, they got younger. And then the running back room, obviously you mentioned Ty Chandler and Alexander Madison. They got Dwayne McBride out of UAB. You still have Keenan Nguanu, who I think is entering his third year into the
Okay.
league.
Yep.
And you got Abram Smith from the XFL. Do you think that replacing one star player with a multitude of above average or average players is going to be successful for the Vikings this year?
Well, and also it's the unknown factor because they don't have a whole lot of tape on them either, so you don't really know how to schematically play against them yet. So I think that also plays an advantage of going younger and going with guys that haven't been in the league or haven't been seen so much yet. So a little bit of the unknown factor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, they got younger. You said you didn't like some of the moves that were made. What are some of the moves that you didn't like for the Minnesota Vikings?
I understand that Adam Thielen was kind of getting older, and I just feel like there should have been more room to have him maybe be a final year veteran presence. He is the hometown kid. And also I kind of still think Delvin's got plenty of tread left on the tires left on Delvin Cook, and I think that him going to the Jets with Rodgers is going to make for some interesting times out there in the AFC East. I think that made that team better, even though they do have Bryce Hall coming off that knee injury. That gives them more time to give him more time to get back into game shape and ready to be himself. So I think we took a loss losing Delvin Cook. I'm not so sure that we took a loss in Adam Thielen, but his veteran presence, he does know how to move the chains, and he is a very good at his route running ability. So he's got a lot of knowledge to give to these young receivers.
Absolutely. So let's talk about their draft strategy. For just to recap, Minnesota drafted Jordan Addison with the 23rd overall pick. They selected Mekhi Blackman, DB, out of USC with the 102nd. With the 134th pick and the 141th pick, they went with two guys from LSU: safety Jay Ward and defensive tackle Jaquelin Roy. Then they went Jaron Hall with pick 164, quarterback out of BYU. Very interesting decision. And they finished off with DeWayne McBride at pick 222 in the seventh round out of UAB. We also picked up two impressive undrafted rookie free agents in Ivan Pace Jr., linebacker out of Cincinnati, and then outside linebacker Andre Carter II out of Army. Did you like how the Vikings went about their draft, or was there something about it that kind of threw you off a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I was thinking in a few different directions, but ultimately, I'm not really mad at the way this draft has worked out, especially with Ivan Pace being undrafted. He is being talked about as possibly the star on the defensive side of coming out of camp so far. So not only is he undrafted, but he's earned a role on a roster spot on the team going forward, and he might just make himself a starter by the time the season's over.
Absolutely, and we all saw his very impressive performance against, I believe, the Seahawks. He was absolutely just manhandling people, especially for a guy of his size to be able to do that is very very impressive. let's start to break down the Vikings by position groups. Now we covered wide receivers and running backs, but no matter what you do offensively, you can't get anything done without a really good offensive line. And I feel the Vikings have a very underrated offensive line. Matter of fact, I have the Vikings ranked as a top 8 offensive line in the NFL. What are your feelings towards the offensive line, and do you have any concerns when it comes to them?
There is a little bit of concern. I'd like there to be a little bit more um, uh, bigger names on the line. But I what I like for us is that all five of the guys, they're the same guys 2 or 3 years in a row now. So it's continuity and chemistry that is being built. And so now these guys are in lockstep and know what each other are thinking and doing before they're doing it. So I think that in itself is going to help build this line, even though they may not be the biggest names. I think they are set up to be one of the better offensive lines, like you mentioned, this season.
Absolutely. So what I really love about the Vikings is they got two really good tackles. One Christian Darrisaw and then O'Neal on the other. O'Neal to me is a top 5 right tackle in the NFL. I love the inside with Cleveland and Bradbury and those big boys. I think Ingram is going to take a bigger step up and establish himself in a much larger way this season. But the major question for me is, from a pass rushing standpoint, are these guys going to be able to hold up game after game? Because I'm thinking Kirk Cousins is going to throw the ball at least 30 times every game. Will Kirk stay clean, or do you think that he's going to take a fair amount of sacks?
I believe that they have made an emphasis on trying to keep Kirk at least on his feet more, maybe not so much clean. But I think they're trying to lessen the hits he's been consuming this year. So I think they made that a focal point, and I think we'll see more of an upright Kirk Cousins this season. And like
Absolutely.
you said, I think Ingram in his second year will make a big step forward, and he's got the same group of guys around him that know how to build him up. So Bradbury, O'Neal, Darisaw, I think we're pretty set. And you got Ezra Cleveland. So yeah, I lots of veteran presence on our line, and it's like gotta stay healthy. And if we can do that, I think we'll be doing just fine.
And we're going to talk Kirk Cousins a little bit later because he's a polarizing figure to say the least. One, because of the position he plays, and two, because he draws very contrasting opinions. Two opinions that are going to be shared here later on in the episode. We're going to switch it to the defensive side of the ball. As mentioned, Brian Flores is the DC, replacing Ed. Was it Ed Donatel or Tom Donatel? I forget
I
his
think it was Ed.
I think it was Ed. Yeah, it was Ed, right? So obviously defense wasn't great last year for the Vikings to say the least. But you guys bring a great defensive mind in Brian Flores. You got to be running a 3-4 package that also flexes out into the nickel. And let's start with the interior defensive line. I mean, you guys got some dudes. You guys picked up Dean Lowry from the Packers in the offseason. I think that Harrison Phillips is one of the most underrated interior linemen in the NFL. What are your thoughts on the position?
Yeah, I really like Harrison Phillips. Obviously, we'd like to still have Delvin Tomlinson, but I think Harrison Phillips, with the experience that he got to have with Tomlinson, learned some things and is almost as good and maybe is as good as Tomlinson. So I'm excited to see what our defense is going to do this year. Again, we have got a lot of decent players, good players. It's just a matter of figuring out what they do best and being able to emphasize that to its best potential as often as possible. And I think Brian Flores is kind of a mind and maybe better suited to do that than Donatel was. So I'm really excited to see what this defense is going to do because we definitely need different and better defense than we had last year.
Yes, and one of the shocking moves for me is when you guys decided to get rid of Darius Smith. And the reason why is because, one, I'm a big fan of Darius Smith. Obviously, he missed time in 2021, but since moving on from the Baltimore Ravens, that dude has been one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. He had 10 sacks last year. He had a lot of quarterback pressures. I thought he was a very good player. I thought you guys should have got rid of Daniil Hunter. I thought that there was some trade potential. He's about to be 30. You can't really give him a large deal. He's a good player. He's not Von Miller, in my opinion, because Von Miller is like the hallmark for giving an older guy a long term deal. Now that Zadarius Smith is gone, do you feel that Marcus Davenport can really step up and be a solid number two rusher, or do you have some concerns in that area?
I mean, I was impressed with the way Marcus Davenport was getting his job done with Cam Jordan on the other side down in New Orleans. So I don't see any reason why he can't be at least a suitable product here in Minnesota on the other side to complement Daniil Hunter the way he was complimenting Cam Jordan in New Orleans.
Absolutely, and just for everyone, just a recap during his 5 years in New Orleans, because he's a first round pick, said that fifth year option. In 62 games played, he started 32 of them. He had 139 combined tackles, 75 solo tackles, and then he had 21 and a half career sacks during his tenure there. He did have a pretty poor season in 2022, but he had a career year in 2021 with 9 sacks. Perhaps a change of scenery is just what's needed for Marcus Davenport. Let's move on to the DB room. Major changes. You guys got a lot younger, which was needed. No offense to Pat P, but it's clear that time was catching up with him. But we do wish him the best in Pittsburgh. You guys selected Andrew Booth Jr. last year. You guys have Mekhi Blackman this year. You guys picked up Trey Gowan, I believe, in a trade. But don't quote me on that. You guys signed Brian Murphy, a very underrated corner. You still have Harrison Smith, strong safety, the old man in charge. How do you feel about this DB room, and do you think that they're going to be more effective than they were last year?
I do, and I think yes, we have gotten younger. I think Byron Murphy is in year 3 or 4, so I think he's got a little bit of actual NFL experience and veteranness to the room. Along with that, like you said, Harrison Smith is the elder statesman in the DB room as a safety. He's teaching Lewis Seen, who was injured last year. He's coming back. I think he'll be doing fine. As you said, we got Booth Jr., who's having injury issues. But I think if we can get past that hurdle, we can actually find out what he is or isn't. And then Akilib Evans looked pretty good last year. I see a lot of room for improvement for him this year. Again, and a Brian Flores defense. I think that the guys that are in this room and what their talent levels are, combined with what Brian Flores is expecting them to do, I think we're going to see a much better pass coverage team than we had last year, which is sort of easy to say because we were one of the worst. So it's not hard to get improvement when you're one of the worst.
Fair enough, fair enough. So we're gonna take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk more Minnesota Vikings. We're gonna break down Kirk Cousins, how we feel about him, how we feel about his contract situation, and what we expect from him going forward. We're gonna talk about Justin Jefferson, talk about expectations for 2023, and is Minnesota a legitimate Super Bowl contender? We'll be back with all that great content.
This commercial is brought to you by TrueBrain. Say hello to TrueBrain. We're not magicians. We're not going to turn you into a rocket scientist, unless you're already a rocket scientist. We're not big pharma, and our products are custom made to boost mental output. We empower people to do their best thinking.
Welcome back to the hot seat. I am joined here with Steve Rogers of Team NBS Media. We're talking about the name right on his shirt, the Minnesota Vikings. As you can tell, Steve is a huge Vikings fan by the jerseys, helmets, and memorabilia behind him. But he does provide excellent and knowledgeable info. And one of the things that he has always said is that Kirk Cousins is a legitimate quarterback in the NFL and that he is completely disrespected. I'm one of the guys that has been disrespecting him, but he showed me that there is a new side to him this last year. Obviously, his play on the field and his what we saw in the documentary Quarterback on Netflix. That problem for Kirk Cousins isn't necessarily Cousins himself, but I've always said this, even though I have no evidence to back it, is that Kirk Cousins can't see at night, and that's why he always his play in primetime games is a lot different than when earlier kickoff. However, he might legitimately be the best option for the Vikings, not just this season, obviously, but for the next 5 to 10 years, depending on how long he wants to play. However, he is entering a contract year in 2023. How could we see an extension soon for Kirk Cousins, or do you think the Vikings are going to play out and see what happens in the offseason?
Yeah, I think they've gone as far as they're already going to go with Kirk Cousins in contract talks. I think they've put that on the shelf for the year. I think they've just decided that we're going to ride out this final year of this contract and see what Kirk Cousins can do with this offense, with this many wide receivers. and find out what he can do in a primetime game and in hopefully some real playoff scenarios. And maybe we can make a deep run, and it gives them enough reason to say Kirk Cousins is worth a new contract because we've paid him a lot of money to be a regular season quarterback thus far. We're looking for postseason and beyond. We're looking for that Super Bowl. So we need a Super Bowl quarterback, and we can't afford to pay someone who isn't won Super Bowl money. So I think we're gonna see what Kirk Cousins can really do this year, and then we'll find out if we re-sign or he becomes a free agent.
Yeah, and the problem for Kirk Cousins in terms of contract situation is that Vikings are expected, not expected, they're gonna have to pay a couple other guys fairly soon. Um, Josh Jefferson is obviously the big question mark. He will get paid. He will be a Viking for the next like 5 years. But how much money and what is the guarantee going to be? Whatever it is, it's going to clear that's going to break the record. You also got to pay Christian Darrisaw soon. Obviously, we mentioned Daniil Hunter up for a contract year. Like, I really don't know how much flexibility Cousins has when it comes to contract negotiations, especially Quezi has, for lack of better terms, set a standard, and that is we're not going to be paying people over what we think that they're worth, and that's why they got rid of a lot of guys because they felt their value diminished to where the contract was at. But you look at the Vikings situation, and you look at they're probably going to win at least 9 games this year. That means that they're going to be on the lower half of in terms of selected quarterback in the draft. Yeah, there is a fair amount of excellent quarterbacks coming out of college this year, but majority of them are going to be taken off the board by pick 10. Is Minnesota in a position where they want to trade up to go get a new quarterback? And we always know the risks associated with that, aka Trey Lance. Do they want to continue to ride out with Cousins? I'm not sure. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, and I'm not really sure what is it Jaron Hall that they drafted. I'm not really sure
Yeah.
what his future looks like. I don't really see um, who our backup quarterback is being stepping into being the future of Kirk Cousins either yet at this moment. So it looks like it's either somehow going to be a continuation of Kirk Cousins for at least 1 or 2 more years. Don't know how that contractually looks or lays out. But I think if we're not drafting a quarterback this draft, it's definitely in 2025 going to have to be the priority for the Minnesota Vikings to draft the future quarterback by 2025.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, you look at the backups: Nick Mullins, Jordan Tanamu, and then obviously Jaron Hall. That none of those are guys I expect NFL starter. What's going to be interesting for me personally is that will Minnesota, if they move off of Kirk Cousins, which I don't believe they will, but if they do, will they go after a veteran free agent to kind of bridge the gap as they try to find that young replacement for the future? I'm not sure, but I think that if you really believe in this guy as the way that a lot of people in that Shanahan mold kind of do, because obviously Kevin O'Connell comes from the Shanahan tree because he was under Sean McVay, and then McVay was under Kyle Shanahan, was under his father, so on and so forth. They all like a quarterback like Kirk Cousins. And that's why I don't really see the Vikings moving on from him. We'll just have to wait and see. But whoever is the quarterback there is obviously going to have Justin Jefferson as their wide receiver one. And we don't need to spend any time talking about him because we already know what he is. Dominant wide receiver, about to secure his bag, going to be a Hall of Famer one day, as long as he stays healthy. Not knock on wood, we hope he stays healthy. The question is wide receiver to Jordan Addison. What are your expectations for Addison this year, and did you like that selection by the Vikings when they made it?
I was actually sort of surprised, almost shocked by them drafting a wide receiver, but in seeing and hearing how impressive he has been in all through camp and preseason, dude looks like a stud. And if we can line up another bona fide stud next to Justin Jefferson, I mean, it makes this almost impossible to double team anybody. So for me, I think that's a great move. I think it's working out. We also, again, have KJ Osborne, Jalen Naylor, and then as a taller, bigger target, we've got N'Keal Harry, who's still on that first round draft bubble. We don't know what he is or isn't, along with Rager. So we got so much talent in the wide receiver room. It's what Kevin O'Connell do with them, and can that all mesh together, and can they make it work with Kirk Cousins? So I'm excited to see what this offense is going to do, because this is year 2 of Kevin O'Connell. He already put the scheme in place and changed the dynamic and the chemistry of the entire organization when he came in. And now we're just building on that. And he built a beautiful foundation. We went 13-4, won the division. I don't see, even with all our transition, I don't see a whole lot of us regression. And also with our division, I don't see that our division really got that much better. I think Green Bay is taking a step backwards. Yes, Chicago's getting better. Yes, definitely Detroit got better. And Detroit's going to be our competition for the division this year. But I still think that we've got plenty of shot to take the division again.
Yes, you do, and I share very similar sentiments to you in that I don't really feel that the NFC North improved all that much to really threaten the Vikings. I really love the system that O'Connell has in place. The question is, can they get it done? You guys open the season against at home against Tampa Bay, and then you guys go at Philadelphia division champs. For some reason,
We're
they
like
love
the
to
third
give you
year
guys,
in a row. We just
yeah,
keep going to Philadelphia week 2 to
we,
just take them
yeah,
all.
for no reason. For no reason. And the worst part about it is that you play on Sunday to week 1, and then you play on Thursday week 2. They screwed you guys' schedule up a little bit. You guys are at home against my Chargers week 3. You guys go on the road against Carolina week 4, and then obviously you guys are gonna continue your season. You guys play the AFC West for the AFC division. You guys will also go to Cincinnati as well in that extra game. You guys 2 games against Detroit, 2 games against Green Bay, 2 games against the Bears. You can throw in the NFC South in there as well: Panthers, Saints, Falcons, and the I don't see them. Huh. Oh no, week 1. You guys play Buccaneers week 1, and then you guys also play San Francisco, and then you guys also go on the road to Raiders and Denver for your AFC West matchups. That's an interesting schedule, to say the least. I think you guys will do good in the division, but how are you feeling about everybody else? How do you feel about playing the South? How do you feel about playing the AFC West? And how do you feel about playing in Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of those teams, like having to play Kansas City, having to play Cincinnati. Those are 2 of the AFC Super Bowl favorites. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. And then San Francisco is one of the NFC Super Bowl favorites, and so are the Eagles, who were in the Super Bowl last year. So our outside schedule is going to be really tough, and it's going to be a lot of bumps in the road, but it's also going to be a lot of prove it ground for this team, and maybe solidify to the players that if you can get it done in the regular season against these super teams, maybe you can do it again in the playoffs when you see them again, because these are the teams you will see again in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I'm having a little trouble with is that I believe you guys can get through the regular season, but I fear that you guys are going to be so worn out from such a tumultuous schedule that we're going to have something that happened last year, a first round playoff meltdown. Now, keep in mind for everyone watching that Kirk Cousins has only played in 3 playoff games for the Minnesota Vikings. He won his first ever one in an upset at New Orleans in overtime, where he hit Kyle Rudolph in the end zone for the game winner. And then the week after that, they got, I don't want to use the word blown out, but they got handled by San Francisco. Then the year after that was 2020, so pandemic year, last year of Mike Zimmer. And then last year, obviously, they had a great season, go to the playoffs against the Giants. And I don't even I don't even want to describe what happened because that was just confusing. Obviously, the Minnesota Vikings lost 31-24. Kirk Cousins notably threw a check down on 4th down and I believe 13, and that kind of made a lot of people feel that he got back to his old ways of doing things. Do you think that he's gonna change the Vikings gonna change it up this year and completely reinvent the tendencies from what we're used to them, or do you think that they're gonna fall back into old ways?
Well, let's certainly hope they don't go back to the old ways. That last year of Zimmer was the route in Philadelphia where we got demolished in the NFC Championship game. Was it? Yeah. Anyway, And then last year against the Giants was I just don't even know what that was. That was a game that we played them 2 weeks prior. We knew who they were. They knew who we were, and we should have been the better team, and we should have won that game. We were at home, hometown crowd, and we managed to wet the bed. And then at the end there, that fourth down check down just really looked suspect and made a lot of questions for Kirk Cousins. But I think they've worked through that, him and Kevin O'Connell, and reworking the playbook. And again, year 2 of the playbook, and all these other wide receivers now that are first round talents. I think that will just by default have better results and better outcome, and won't be defaulting back to old ways.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for giving us this insight on the Vikings. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to throw you, Steve, on the hot seat, ask you questions, allow us to have a little bit of back and forth, and really get more of your insight information into the Minnesota Vikings. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the hot seat. Once again, I am your host, Brock Vieira. Check out all types of content on teamnbsmedia.com. Obviously, we cover sports, but we also have lifestyle, food, music. There's a great hip hop series going on. Steve is associated with Team NBS Media's hip hop kind of push as we go into that genre, exploring the history of it, as well, so you can get some great insight on him as well. For all the Vikings fan watching, we also want to give our condolences to the Grant family. Longtime head coach Bud Grant passed away earlier this year at the ripe old age of 95. What a life he lived. 4 Super Bowl championships. He also won a Grey Cup up in Canada with, I believe, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Hall of Famer. What else can you say about him? He was the best of the best. Rest in peace, coach. We are back. Steve Rogers, Minnesota Vikings. We're putting you on the hot seat. For all those, we haven't done this in a while, but we're back at it. For all those who don't remember, I'm going to ask Steve a question. He's going to give a response. I'm going to give a rebuttal to that question, and then he will give a rebuttal to my rebuttal, and then we will move on. We got 3 questions slated for Steve. Moving forward. First one, Steve. In my opinion, this Minnesota Vikings team is the most talented Vikings team that Minnesota has had since the 2019 that went to the NFC Championship game. Do you agree or disagree?
50-50. I don't think it's as talented defensively, but offensively it might be more impressive, because I guess if you want to compare, you would take Randy Moss to Justin Jefferson, and then you've got KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison as the number 2s. So, and then you've got Culpepper and Cousins. I think that they're very comparable, and I'm really excited to see them actually be somewhat similar to what they were in 2009. And I think that's what we're going to see this year. Is we're going to just see a lot of air raid, a lot of bombing the ball around the field, and Kirk Cousins should have close to 5,000 yards thrown this year, I think.
Yeah. So I think you're referencing the 1998 team. That still works, because both 1998 and 2009 had very similar roster constructs.
Yeah.
So basically, the formula is the same way, and we're seeing the same formula right now, right? But the question for me is, who is that Robert Smith? Who is that Adrian Peterson? Well, I'm not really sure about this Minnesota running back room going forward, and I have some major questions about them. Dalvin Cook provide that stability. Dalvin Cook provides you that superstar guy that could get the ball and make a play when you need it to. I don't know if Alexander Mass is that guy. I don't know if Ty Chandler is that guy. I don't really know who that guy is. Too young outside of Harrison Smith, who is way too old. No disrespect to Harrison Smith, but I think that him playing as a strong safety doesn't really suit his skills anymore. He's a little bit older, he's a little bit behind, and he's a little bit slower in my opinion. He doesn't really have the same pop like Harrison used to have back in the day. I think he played a little close to the box. I think he makes more plays, but the problem is, if you do that, who's going to play up top? You don't really have that answer yet, and that's why I have some major concerns about the Vikings in the DB room. And lastly is, even if Danielle Hunter balls out, I'm not sure if Marcus Davenport or whomever can be that second kind of pass rusher for them. If you can't get pressure coming off the right tackle, which is typically the weaker side of the offensive line, how do you expect your number two guy to get pressure off the left tackle, who is arguably the number one offensive lineman on the other opposing teams? There are some big concerns for me. I do see Minnesota having a successful season, but we're talking about NFC Championship game aspirations. I don't see them being there yet. Steve, your rebuttal.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Exactly right. I think that we have plenty of talent to get it done and figured out offensively. We've got the offensive line. I don't think we have the star and power on the offensive line, but we've got a cohesive unit for several years that know each other's tendencies, and the chemistry is built there. So I think that is a strength in an offensive line in and of itself. That is a talent that I think is underrated or underappreciated in the league, is having a cohesive front line, even if it isn't the best line. I think the cohesiveness makes up for not being the greatest. And then, yeah, Kirk Cousins is a great starting quarterback. He's arguably within the top 10-ish range in quarterbacks in the NFL currently. And you got to tip your hat to the guys that are ahead of him, because it's the likes of Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. So and Herbert. So there's a select few guys that are better delivering the ball than Kirk Cousins. He's going to have all the options and weapons available to him. There's no reason. This is his show this year. It's Kirk Cousins prove it time. If you don't get it done this year, then obviously it's you. And then, yeah, like you said, defensively, Daniil's our best pass rushing threat. He's kind of been stumbling the last couple of years, but he's had injuries. I think he's at his healthiest. I think he's got a 1-year deal that he's trying to prove it. He's gone on record saying he wants to be a Viking for life, and he wants to get paid. So if he wants those two things to happen, he's going to have to ball out this year. I think Marcus Davenport can be supportive in that role of adding some kind of pass rushing secondary threat to make them have to adjust to not just Danielle Hunter. I think Harrison Phillips can develop some pressure up the middle. And then again, I think our linebackers, who are now unproven, Jordan Hicks is not a big name, but he's been out there and he's going to be holding the green dot. I've heard that Asamoah and Ivan Pace have even been picking up the green dot already. So if two guys that are unproven are already getting that opportunity, I don't see that our linebacker room has that many holes in it. If all the guys know how to make the calls and adjustments as it's happening, then it becomes just our secondary room, who again has a lot of unproven names. Byron Murphy is still in his rookie deal. Booth and Evans are still on their rookie deal. Scene's on his rookie deal. And then Harrison Smith is the elder statesman as the captain of that defense. And he's probably a future Hall of Famer. So I think maybe there's enough tread left for one more good run in him. This really is the last year for the Vikings window. If they have a window, it's this year.
Absolutely. Well, one of those people that's going to be most effective in this window is Justin Jefferson. As previously mentioned, Justin Jefferson is the odds-on favorite to be the regular season receiving yards leader in the NFL, currently at 5-1 odds, followed by Jamar Chase at 7-1, Tyreek Hill at 7-1, Cooper Kupp at 10-1, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 15-1, CeeDee Lamb at 18-1, Devontae Adams at 18-1, and Jalen Waddle at 20-1. Garrett Wilson at 20-1 as well, before the rest of the list follows with obviously bigger odds. Do you believe Justin Jefferson will be the winner of the NFL receiving yards title?
I have not seen any reason or any question to question whether that would not be the case. He's done that the last 3 consecutive years. Every year he has been on the field, those receiving yards has just climbed and gone up in number, and his own expectation on himself, he has put on himself, has grown. He was trying to do 2,000 yards last year. He got, I believe, over 1,800. I don't see any reason for that to change or stop now. As long as he stays healthy, he's still only, 23, 24? He's going to ball out, and he is the stud that he thinks he is and that everyone knows he is. There's no really stopping Justin Jefferson, especially when now you have to pay attention to 3 other guys on our that are lining up on the other side of the ball with him. So you can't just sit there and double and triple and shadow coverage and take him away. There's too many other options. So he's going to have a field day with this many weapons around him with him to complement what he's already doing.
That's fair. I currently have Devontae Adams as my guy, who I think is going to lead the NFL in receiving yards. I know it's not something you want to hear, considering he was a former Green Bay Packer. But the reason is because I think Justin Jefferson is a great player, and I don't think it's going to be his fault. But the Vikings have too many weapons for him to be the NFL yardage leader. I think that his targets are going to remain the same, but it's not going to be league leading. I think they're going to get Hawkinson much more involved, considering they didn't even have a full year of TJ last year. They picked him up in a midseason trade, so he's going to be a much more involved player this year for Minnesota. I think Jordan Addison's going to get a fair amount of targets, and KJ Osborne's going to get a fair amount of targets. I also think O'Connell really wants to run the ball a lot as well, so I think that could take away, obviously, both you reduce the time of play a lot faster when you run the ball, but also you reduce the opportunities for Justin Jefferson to go out and get those targets. For Devontae Adams, you look at the Raiders right now, Hunter Renfrow clearly took a step back, and I think that there's a loss of confidence with him in the Raiders organization. You look at the wide receiver they picked up, Jacoby Myers, of course, a New England guy, right? That's clearly how they go. You lost a dynamic tight end in Darren Waller and picked up a much more stout guy in Michael Mayer. But Michael Mayer is not a guy that you expect to go and break out for a 1,000-yard season from the tight end position. So I just think, and then Josh Jacobs is kind of like, we don't really know where he's at. He's expected to play for the Raiders, but he also has that big contract dispute with them. Maybe he gets dinged up one time, and maybe the ankle feels a little bit more sore than last year, and maybe I'm going to sit out more than I want to. Therefore, the Raiders have to go to their main star, which is Devontae Adams. That's why I have Adams winning it over Jefferson, not for any of their own skill reasons, but because of the Vikings have much more other avenues that they can go to during a play than the Raiders do. Your response?
Yeah, that Devontae is a great choice and a great option, and he is probably going to be the Raiders' number one option for their offensive system and Jimmy Garoppolo. And yeah, that's clearly going to be a thing they have to overcome, because his target share is definitely going to be higher than Justin Jefferson's target share, because he is going to have to share the ball with Jordan Addison, with KJ Osborne, and with TJ Hawkinson. But I still think Justin Jefferson is going to still clear 1,600 yards. I still think he's going to get near around 100 and some catches. I think what actually is going to change, I think it's actually going to benefit him having, having these other weapons, because it now allows Justin Jefferson to work more freely, because he won't be allowed to be just double teamed and shadow triple covered and whatnot and just eliminated. You're going to have to focus other resources on the KJ Osbornes, on the TJ Hawkinsons, on the Jordan Addisons, leaving Justin Jefferson opportunity left and right. I think Justin Jefferson, I don't know offhand what his touchdown total last year was, but I think I see double-digit touchdowns this year for Justin Jefferson as well.
Absolutely. So just recap for everyone watching about Justin Jefferson's stats. He had 8 touchdowns last year after a double-digit year in 2021. However, he did set a career-high mark in receptions at yards, 128 receptions, 1,809 yards, on his way to be named Offensive Player of the Year. Since he's been in Minnesota for the past 3 years, he has 324 career receptions, 4,825 receiving yards, and also 25 touchdowns. He also has 11 rushes for 40 yards. So just a little factoid in there, and also a rushing touchdown last season as well. And in his career, he's only lost 1 fumble. Well done to him. He continues on a very excellent and probably financially fruitful career in these next couple of years, if not couple of months, as they finalize his extension. The last question I have for you is about the defense. Everyone is hyping up this defense because of Brian Flores and some of the players that they have that we've already mentioned. But I feel that even though this defense is better than last year, they are an average defense at best. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I totally agree. I think as much as can be improved by changing defensive coordinator, I still think that there was a lot of overhaul with the roster. I think losing Eric Hendricks is a big hole to fill. He was a over 100 tackle a year guy every year as linebacker and middle linebacker. He was the Mike Dot. He knew every call. He was kind of the captain in the middle. And so losing that is a void, and we need to fill it on top of get better. So I think that presents a difficult challenge, but I think it's one that Brian Flores is ready for. And I think we did make some pretty good adjustments and additions to help consolidate and make that happen. I think Byron Murphy is proving himself to be more than effective to be the number one cornerback for us. Yes, we won't be a top 10 defense, but I think going from what the 27-28 to like 18, 16 is going to be a huge enough jump and improvement that it'll make huge dividends for this season.
That's fair. I don't agree that it's going to be a top 10 defense either, but I think they could be a lot higher than 16. I think they could be between the 15 to 10 mark. And the reason why is because schedually, you face high powered passing offenses. Now, that can be very detrimental, but at the same time, if you run a zone scheme like Brian Flores does in the Patriots scheme in general, it can be very beneficial. It's really going to come down to the play of your pass rushers. That's it. Obviously, Davenport and Hunter, if they're able to get to the quarterback, you'll win. If they don't, you'll lose. But even though they're young, you guys got some very talented corners at in a zone scheme can make some plays. I love Mekhi Blackman. I think that was a great pick. Yeah,
Yeah.
Andrew Booth Jr., Brad Murphy. We didn't really see Lewis sign last year, but at Georgia, you did see some of those specks of potential. It depends on how they run their nickel defense. Now, if they run the nickel defense where they bring out Harrison Smith into the box as an extra linebacker and put maybe Jay Ward as that strong safety, I think you guys could have get some really interesting things done in terms of pass defense. It really just depends on schematically how you guys go about it. But I think that we're not talking about this defense enough because the offense is so high powered. But I think that this is a defense that, unlike last year, can get some very critical stops throughout the game that can help build up that point differential to be a lot higher than -3. Steve, your rebuttal.
Yes, I totally agree. I think the way that this defense schematically is built is better suited to pair and match with the offense that we're going to be running this year. So it's going to be more of a whole unit running this season as opposed to one offense, one defense, and see what happens and try to make it work. So I think they're more cohesively offense to defense complementary to each other as a units and Brian Flores' scheme and Kevin O'Connell's scheme, and they've been going against each other all off season. And our DB room has had to go against Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and KJ Osborne all camp long. That can only make them better. I mean, you can't sharpen metal without metal. So I think, we're set up to have a great year. I think these cornerbacks may not have the biggest names and might not have the cachet, but I think in this system and their youth and they're deeper now because there's more of them, and I think so being able to move around pieces and keep fresher legs will also improve on keeping pressure applied and not giving up so many big plays.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you being here, Steve. We got some great insight into the Vikings. We're looking forward to seeing them this season, and we're looking forward to seeing Justin Jefferson continue to go on and be an excellent player. No matter if you like the Vikings, hate the Vikings, you gotta respect game, and that guy, he definitely has it. Steve, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on teambsmedia.com. All my content goes up there. You can find me reposting on Twitter at the real Mr. Rogers 814. I have joined Instagram at the real Mr. Rogers, and TikTok is also the real Mr. Rogers. That's where I'm at. You can find me putting content out as often as I can.
Absolutely. So we look forward to seeing you throughout the season. We're gonna check in with you because obviously your connection to the Vikings and they're one of the more exciting teams to watch. Last question before we go. It's not a debate. This is just for you. What is Minnesota's record in 2023?
All right, so I actually haven't gotten into that yet, but I was going to. So now that we're here, now the question is on me. I think we get the job done week 1 against Tampa Bay at home. I'm pretty sure we're going to go to Philadelphia week 2 and lose, especially on the short turnaround. We then get to come home to the Chargers. I don't see that being an easy game at all. Eric Kendrick gets to come home and revisit. I want to say maybe we escape with a win there. We have to go back to the East to go see Carolina and visit Adam Thielen. I think with a rookie quarterback and they're still kind of building and figuring it out, I think we should get that job done. And then we get the fun time of 3 consecutive weeks of Kansas City. Oh, that's Chicago. Okay, never mind. All right. So we get Kansas City. That's going to be an L. And then we get Chicago. We should figure that out. San Francisco is probably another L. Green Bay in Green Bay. I think this year we might be able to get that job done with the changeover they got going with Jordan Love. And then we go to Atlanta. 2 road games in a row. Atlanta's getting better, but I think we're a better team than Atlanta. And we have to see New Orleans. Now, in my opinion, I think New Orleans is the best team in that Southern Division. That will be a battle. And we've also had many battles with the New Orleans Saints over the years. Lots of history to go through there. So I think we'll squeak that one out at home. We go on the road to Denver. Denver's got a new coach in Sean Payton. They're changing things around. They've got Russell. We'll see if he can cook. By that time of the year, they'll probably have had it figured out, or they will be once again burning into the ground. So that game could go either way on us, and it's a road game going west. Then we get Monday night against Chicago. Well, being Monday night, I don't know if Kirk Cousins' eyes come with him, as you will say. So that might actually be a game we lose to Justin Fields. And then we get our bye week, and we have to see Las Vegas in Las Vegas and go on the road against the Bengals. I'm going to say we lose that road game to the Bengals. Maybe not losing to Garoppolo, I would hope for myself, but road games are road games. And then we finish the season with Detroit, Green Bay, and Detroit again. I think, yikes, that's going to be rough. We might get the home win against Detroit, but we lose against them on the road. I don't see us getting more than 12 total wins this year. And that should be competitive for the division. I think the Lions would be right around 12 wins as well. So it's going to be a battle, and we might end up as a wild card team.
Yeah, we're kind of all in agreement that we have the Vikings at around the 10 to 12 win mark. If you look at the NFC, it's a diminished conference compared to the AFC. So
Absolutely.
a wild card spot with 3 wild card spots, I think you guys have a great opportunity over there. You guys will have some competition if it does come to that wild card spot with the East. Obviously, you have the Eagles, Cowboys look better, Giants look better, Commanders look intriguing, to say the least. So we'll just have to wait and see. Looking forward to a great season. Once again, we want to thank you for coming on this show. Any last words before we head out?
Nice to see you. Hope you guys check everything out we got going on, Team NBS Media, and Brock's got it all going on, and we've got a lot of stuff going on, content all day, every day for you guys, so check us out.
Absolutely. For much more content, join us at teamnbsmedia.com. For Steve Rogers and myself, Brock Vieira, we'll catch y'all next time. Have a good one.